o'clock. We're live, ladies and gentlemen.
Have you your uncle?
That's my dad's brother. Yep. Alice probably don't spread that around very much.
Fred, she's still alive, right?
Yeah.
Well, you said we've got a river like that.
No. I wasn't talking about her past tense.
Yeah.
Fred somebody asked that.
Fred was his uncle and my cousin.
Okay.
And Fred was about, 5 years older than I am.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
It seemed like he died young.
70.
Yeah.
72.
Yeah.
6:01.
All right, 6 p.m. Is Diane here for this one?
Work sessions.
Okay. All right, we'll go ahead and get the work session started. It's over budget priorities for the commission. Yeah, dang.
We wanted to have a work session. As you are aware that we're in the middle of our budget calendar, or we're at the beginning stages of our budget calendar for the 2022 fiscal year. Currently, Susan has printed off a great, very detailed calendar map that kind of outlines exactly the steps that we need to accomplish to stay on target in terms of creating the budget for the new fiscal year. We've completed only 2 steps of that process, one being capital plan request to directors, and the second being capital plan request from directors, meaning we asked for it and they gave it to us. So we have that from directors. We're still chasing down a few extra leads, but we have the majority of that already. The next stage would be around April 7th to review those requests and kind of see what we can fit into our budget and our available monies and what we cannot. So that's only half of it. The employees come to us and they say, these are the things that we need next year to do the job that you are asking us to do. And we look at that list and we see what we can realistically do. That's half of the coin. The second half of that is we need to align our goals internally with your priorities on a larger scale. So the point of this meeting is simply to kind of get an idea of what it is that is important to you for this next year in terms of things that you want to address. Where should we put our money? And so with that said, I hope I didn't overstep your presentation. Susan is going to talk to us about maybe some of the history, our present, and potentially our future.
I'm going to take my mask off for this.
Thank you.
What I'm going to hand out is currently the percentages of how your budget is broken down today for the 2021 budget year. And from that will probably spark the conversation of why is this here? And so I broke it down in categories, kind of like when I did the budget presentation last year. One of the things that I want to say that we're talking about tonight, we're not talking about our utility accounts. We're just talking about the general fund and our streets department, because our utility accounts really should fund themselves. And so this really is just a conversation about like public safety, economic development, those kinds of conversations with where the general fund is actually funding those dollars. And so we're talking about general fund and the streets department. And so my percentages is taking those 2 budgets and putting them together. And then I broke it down by how much is public safety, how much is quality of life items. And so that's what I'm going to pass out.
Get one. All right.
All right. So looking at this, we just really broke it down into categories: public safety, quality of life, economic development, debt service, streets, capital outlay, and then government. And under government, it has a lot of different things that roll up under government. So if you'll turn to the next page, it takes each one of the departments in the general fund and breaks it down under those categories. So for public safety, which is 44% of your budget, it's police, fire, dispatch, animal control, and codes. And part of codes, part of the community development person, their salary is coming out of there. So she kind of crosses over between codes and also economic development. But for this purpose, I just rolled it up under public safety. Then we have quality of life, which is 15% of the budget. And you have parks, LaRoche Complex, the Aquatic Center, Golf, Buck Run Community Center, and Memorial Hall. And then we have economic development. And under that category, we put economic development and airport. And then debt service, which is 8% of your budget, is pretty much, you really have to just, that's just what it is. It is what it is.
What is debt service? Explain that.
That is right now, that is paying for it's paying for your aquatic center and Buck Run. Last payment is this year. We also have last payment of the golf course. And then we have the golf carts that we just did a lease purchase on, the energy grant.
Making payments is debt service.
We're making payments.
Dolly the Trolley's on there. Is that
I think that one paid off.
paid off?
So
we're-
we have, and I know you showed this to me earlier, so I know you kind of probably can find it, or if not, that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
We have a certain amount of debt instruments that are outstanding, meaning that they are not paid off.
Right.
And so this debt service is essentially the payments that go towards retiring each outstanding loan.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of what the question you were asking.
Yeah.
As a city, what do you see as a good number for debt service?
In your financial policy, I want to say it's not to exceed 20%. And in some of our, and don't quote me on that, but I think that's the number that we try to meet. And if you look at like our utility accounts, we're over that threshold. So it makes it hard for us. Our debt ratio is not quite in line with what our financial policy would like to be. So when we get to the utility accounts and start talking about them during the budget work session, that's a great time for us to really talk about rate analysis and, you know, is our rate set at the right amount?
It would now be a good time to talk about possibly if we're looking in the future at any big funding, possibly do it now while rates are low.
Yes and no, because you're going to have to figure out how you're going to pay for it. So, I mean, that's always been the conversation when we start talking about that. When we talk about streets as a body, you can only borrow up to $600,000 per the statute. Anything over that amount would have to go to the vote of the people, and so you're really kind of tied to that's all you could ever issue in debt. Now there are categories, so like you may have. Some of them that may be for main traffic ways. You could do $600,000 there, and then you might be able to do something for a collector. And I think you could do $600,000 in each one of the categories. But that would be something that our bond attorney could tell us. So just kind of keep that in mind. You are capped at a certain point statutorily.
But it is interesting. The question Josh brought up is because our debt service is probably on the low side as opposed to what other cities are. That's good.
In the general fund, yes.
In the
not
debt
in your,
service.
Not in your utility funds. I would disagree with that.
Okay, in the utility.
It's almost 30% of
No.
you. We're not talking about utility funds, but when we get to that point, it's almost 30% of your debt ratio when you're looking at it.
30% of the 8%.
No.
Yeah. It's utility funds, have a different debt service.
Yes,
Yeah, just for clarity, so this is 8% of the
of the general fund.
money available in the general fund.
Hmm.
So this is not water.
No.
Waste.
Correct. Yeah. And what's even more confusing is this is just what the general fund funds, right? And then you have a debt service fund that is also a levied fund that pays for additional general fund debt. So it's kind of confusing, but it's spread across those two funds. So you really have more than this 8%. I know.
It's 8% of the general fund.
It's
but we also
8% of
have
the
a
general
debt
fund.
service fund and utility fund.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I
And
was
so
thinking about
you don't know off the top of your head our debt service compared to our total.
For all funds?
Yeah.
I don't know that off the top of my head. I'd have to do the calculations.
Susan, it's probably has nothing to do with what you're trying to tell us, but so you reserve money in each of these areas. Do we have reserves in them? Does that make any sense?
You have some reserves in your general fund.
And so is that included like in the 44% of public safety?
No.
Or,
It's a separate line item.
okay.
So outside of what's here, you have $1 million in reserves. And you always want to keep that because that's about 3 months operating for you to operate in January, February, March. Because in the event that the county can't meet their needs of like a tax distribution or your sales tax comes in low, you want to still be able to pay your people. So that's why you have those reserves in place.
Well, and general recommendation is sometimes higher than 3 months. Some people recommend 6 to 9 months.
Yeah.
So we're on the lower end of that.
But we're on the higher end of where we were.
Yeah.
Just improved
Definitely.
from the past.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask a stupid question, but it'll go someplace that'll surprise you. So are these percents 100%?
Yes.
So we through this we've committed 100% of our general fund income. What I'm at, so what monies do we use like when we go for a grant? Where does that?
That would be under capital outlay programs, that 3%.
Okay.
And for 2021, it's kind of small. I want to say it's around 35,000. Nope, I'm totally off. 52,000.
Still a pretty small amount.
It's still pretty small.
Okay.
So,
Is there any-
and that's dedicated to the airport grants. So there was nothing else that was identified last year when we went through the process that could be a grant match. And
We
You
didn't
built
have
any-
anything shovel ready at that point in time, correct? Is that what you're saying? Or
yes and no. The grants just hadn't been researched.
Okay.
So that's, as we're doing projects, those are the things that we need to discuss is what grant opportunities are available.
right.
And well, how do we have monies readily available to access them or need any matching amounts is my concern. That's why I was asking the question.
Yeah, that's where the priorities have to be set.
Do we have any money built, let's say the streets or the public, as it's set up? So you say we have 10% in streets, but some of that 10% can be used towards matching grants also.
Sure, it could.
Not
Mhm.
just capital outlay programs.
Yes, that is
But
correct.
only for street projects.
Right.
But only for
But I mean,
streets.
but then police would have some, like if they're going out for.
No,
So if they don't have nothing, they don't build any, going out for, hey, we need fingerprinting things out here. None of that's built into their budget at all.
no, it is not.
Can they build some
There-
of that into their budget?
No, because there's not enough money available to do all these. So let me just give you an example. You talked about police. That's a really good one to kind of hone in on. He's very strapped in his budget. 85% of his budget goes to salaries. And so then you have 5% that goes to contractual type items, 5% that goes to commodities, and then the police and fire switch back and forth between years. So one year the police gets it, the next year the fire gets it. And it's equivalent to 2 mills. And that's also 5% of their budget. And so that's for equipment. So like when he needs police cars, that would only buy him a couple of police cars.
How much is that? 2 mils? I mean, dollar.
It's about 80,000. Yeah,
Say what now?
80
And they switch back and forth.
each year. And sometimes the fire doesn't need it, and so they'll say, okay, we're going to forgive this year, and we're going to go ahead and let the police have it. So they're really good about working together. But that's those 2 mills that used to be levied in a separate fund years ago. It was brought into the general fund, and so we've just kept it in their department so that way they always are using
Do you
it.
think the new municipal court could help with their funds?
Yes, but I think you're going to have some additional costs there too.
But do you think it'll be a net? I mean, it'll be a gain overall.
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't know
that's a
how
no-brainer.
much. I don't even know how to project that
Right.
because depending on the case, you may have to get a prosecuting or a what is that called? A defense attorney. Yeah.
Sure. But again,
So-
if you got to throw some money out to make money, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if it costs us 25,000 and we get 150 on return, we're good.
If it works that way.
Well-
There's just so many unknowns because we've not done it.
But there's other cities that are doing it and making money, right?
I think Iola does it.
Yes. Some of that's on their court costs. And so that was one of the things that we brought to you. I don't think was that one of the fees that we didn't. We tabled that one. So that's one of the fees that we're asking to increase because the administrative costs are going to go up for us. And so that was one of the things that we wanted to discuss with the commission.
What's court cost right now on it?
They're only like $75. So we were wanting to increase them up to 100
Will you factor? So how will you ever factor that into the budget? You won't factor that in, will you?
for next year.
Yeah.
I'll probably just do a percentage increase and just give us a little bit of cushion. The nice thing is if you get more dollars in a year, we can always adjust the budget accordingly to have more budget authority to spend.
As a criminal, I want to know, when do I pay court costs? When I get the speeding ticket, I pay $75 court costs, right?
I can't answer that.
Travis?
Yes, when you're found guilty or plead guilty, or the fine and the court costs are assessed.
And okay, so even when you plead guilty and don't go to court, because I know that was a lot of people's, complaint. Well, I didn't go to court and I still had to pay the $100.
Yeah. You still do.
You still pay it. Is that fair?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I
I'm
think
just,
you're
I'm,
meant to
I'm,
go to.
I'm throwing it out there. Just
I'm assuming you're meant to go to court, whether you.
paperwork, they still had to have the
Yeah.
judge there and
Yeah.
things like that. That's what I'm saying. I'm just
Yeah.
spitballing here. I'm
Yeah.
just making sure we're doing the right thing. So,
And yeah.
Right. Exactly.
did we have citizens' comments tonight?
No.
So,
Going against statutes.
Not if we take, well, some of them do, but the costs that we're talking about, no. So the 75 is fully in our budget to cover our costs. I think there's $25 roughly that goes to the state.
What is under the government, the commission 1%? I'm just curious. Is
Um,
that what Kevin gets, or
the government, okay, hang on, go back. Government 1%.
the commission?
Yeah.
Oh, the commission. Trust me, you guys have a lot of costs and it's gone up.
I haven't
So-
seen it.
I can suggest one. They could all start using their iPads.
I was going to say, can we give our
running off
iPads back so we don't have to
500.
pay that service?
If you could get a decent iPad, Randy, that'd be great.
Yes,
Mine
we
don't work.
We can take that out of your budget, but the cost is still going to be there. And gosh, all the paper that you guys are using is probably even more of a cost. No comment.
Looking at me.
You guys have had more costs this year than you would normally in a normal year because of some of the publications that have happened because of city attorney, just the changes that have been made. All those costs get charged to the commission.
So how much is 1%?
What your budget is?
Commission.
$3,200.
$3,200. I just wanted that for myself and for the public. Thank you, Michael. 30. This counts as public service for Michael. So $3,200. That's still not too bad for the administrative body that's working for the community for free.
It's actually lower than that. That's a typo. I think it's 0.1%.
I was gonna, yeah.
It's
Because that
0.1%.
would make our budget only
I don't-
$320,000.
Yeah.
I don't think the city manager would have the same.
No, that's why I thought it. I was like, it's a 0.1%. That's a typo.
See, I'm doing this.
Hey, I did this at 10 o'clock last night. Give me a break.
No problem.
What is our total general fund last year?
If I take out the cash reserves, it's roughly $7 million.
But that's
Seven
what
point-
that's what this 100% equals.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and plus your streets, which is about 800 and some thousand. So you got to add those two together.
Okay, so 7 million general fund.
Yeah, rough numbers.
Okay.
I don't
That
have
way I
it.
can go through in the 20% roughly.
So, Jeremy, did you get that answer?
Yes.
Josh, can I back up a little bit then? So, one of my overall concerns about our budgetary process that you guys can explain to me is I just don't feel like we have enough internal dollars to accomplish all the projects that we want to accomplish. So, as they go through internally and they talk about their projects, are the directors aware, or are they planning ahead to say, well, we think in order to complete 6th and Horton, for instance, that we're going to need, however, do they build that into their budget numbers, or are anticipations of needing money for grants, or are we just, otherwise it seems like we're going to get so tight in what we do that we're not going to have any resources available to go after outside monies that we need. I'm just not sure how we build that into our process.
Well, I can't comment because this is my first budget cycle in this location, but in previous communities, basically when they plan forward and say these are the projects that we want to accomplish over this next year, they take into account cost of materials, personnel, rental equipment, so on and so forth, and that usually is submitted with their budget for the next year. I would assume that that's how it's done here, but I do know that projects come up without any notice. You know, a street may just need to be repaired, or the commission may decide that a street warrants attention that maybe did not at the beginning of the budget year. So I would assume they budget what they can foresee, but what they cannot, we just amend the budget to account for.
Does
So,
does that
yeah,
include an awareness, though, that we may need monies to actually go out and get monies?
what Randy's saying
Are
is
we
we
planned
have,
ahead enough to do that?
yeah, do we have dollars set aside in these funds
For matching grant
for
funds.
matching
Yes,
grant
yes.
funds? Are we allocating all of those funds? Because as of right now, with some decisions that we as a commission have made, we're very tight in those areas. It seems like we're very tight in those areas, and we want to go out for dollars for grant funding, but how are we supposed to do that if we have no cash dollars to be capable of doing that, because we haven't budgeted that or set aside any funds for that? I mean, I feel like the only areas that we really have that are our utilities.
Well,
Yes, would that be
I would
safe?
agree.
Okay,
well,
but
I
we
mean,
don't have that for economic development, public safety.
this commission creates the budget, so I would assume that if you guys want that to be a separate funded item, then I can't imagine why we couldn't do that. Is there a
Dollars.
reason?
Where you would have there's no money available.
Just to go off what
I
Randy's
mean,
saying,
well,
but
you
for
got to take from
streets-
somewhere and add to
Yeah,
somewhere else.
right.
It's
But
just a
for
matter of
streets
priorities.
and water and all that, they plan for the whole project, right?
So so let's try not to muddy it up with
Right.
with the utilities
Okay, so
tonight.
let's say
Okay,
water
so let's talk about streets.
Yep.
So before the vote, we really didn't have any flexibility.
Right.
You now have a little bit more flexibility because you have more dollars coming into this. However, we put together a 5-year plan of what we think it would take to repair some of these streets. So let's say for this year, we need to spend $800,000 on the projects that we have laid out. You wouldn't necessarily have to spend that much if we did use part of those dollars as a grant match. And so then that just gets you ahead for the next year.
Right.
And so it's really, what we've run into is on a lot of the KDOT projects, they have to be shovel ready. So you're in the process of getting an engineer. That's going to help us tremendously so that we can identify the projects we know we need to do, get them engineered, and then we're ready to apply for some of these grants. That's always been the conversation. Since
Right.
I've come back, that's always been the conversations. We've got to get an engineer and get these projects engineered so that we can go out for grants. And it's the same thing for, I know I wasn't going to talk about utilities. It's the same thing on the utility side.
Right.
They have to be shovel ready. You almost always have to have the
Yes, and-
preliminary engineering.
I think that we're close.
Yeah.
I think so.
I really think we're close.
We're getting
I mean, we've got the data, we've got what we need, and we're going to have a work session soon on this.
I would.
on these.
It's not for this agenda's discussion, but yes, I would very much like to see us perhaps make a decision within the next week or two. But that is really your timeline, so I don't want to impose that on you.
Yeah.
But I would love to see that decision be made in the next week or two, and us to kind of get that engineer on the ground and get moving and start to kind of work on some of these things that Susan's talking about.
Yeah, I think that I think that's going to happen, and I think that we're going to be moving into this and have some flexibility, like you say. I would like to know on this 10% streets, what's 10% of? How many dollars are
7
we
million?
talking about?
For the streets, you have about
No, what's 10% of our budget? That's what
that's what I'm going to tell you.
Well, I know our total budget.
It was, Josh, did you? It'd be about. It would be about 8 million total is the total general fund and streets budget.
Yeah,
Off of this here.
and nothing to do with the utilities. So we're talking about 10% of 8 million.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to have $8 million in these.
No,
in this circle.
800,000. You're going to have 800,000 for streets.
Okay, but total overall,
Yeah.
we're going to have 8 million in these
Yes.
circles.
Yes.
And can you tell me?
I thought you said, yeah, you're right.
Can you tell me when? And I'm going to concentrate on streets because that's
Yeah.
you know why. And
These ain't
what
sewers.
we have street maintenance and we have street improvements, and we have a sales tax of 1%. That 90% of that 1% goes to street maintenance, and we have the 0.5% that goes to street improvements.
Mhm.
90% of that goes to street improvements.
Mhm.
And then we've got a gasoline tax out there of 250,000.
Mhm.
Where does that go?
It goes in there as well. That's
Where-
part of that
Into what?
the streets fund.
I know,
It's-
but we're looking at two different divisions of streets. We're maintenance and we're improvements.
So
And so what I'm wanting to know, if we're saying that we got 10%, so we got $800,000 total, and but yet what does that 1% generate? What is the 1% that we have contributed to maintenance? How many dollars is that? How many dollars is the 0.5% that we said we're going to use for street improvements? How many dollars is that?
So at the last commission meeting, I handed out that information and I broke it down of how the street department is funded, and it included all those dollars. And so to answer your question, Pete, out of the $800,000, you've got $389,000 that goes to salaries. So $800,000,
389.
$389.
389 that goes to maintenance salaries.
And that needs to increase. So this budget that was prepared didn't increase. It needs to increase by $87,000
For the two new
people.
So 387
So
leaves
for-
So 460,
460.
470.
Yeah. Yep.
413.
Uh-huh.
So we have $413,000 for street improvements for this. This is 2021 budget.
So for
Okay.
2021 budget, $413,000 goes to people. People out of that budget.
For maintenance. See, I'm
I guess if that's what
Susan,
if you're if
yeah,
you, if
yeah.
you want
I'm
to
trying.
call,
I'm trying to get it in.
but I can't tell you that they're just working on maintenance. I don't know. I can just tell you that that's what pays for people in your budget.
Mm-hmm. So we have no people assigned to street improvements in the current budget. We have no people assigned to street maintenance, which I think is wrong. I think that we need to have two separate divisions there, one for street maintenance, so that we know that, okay, you've got $387,000, and that includes these people. These people that we have on staff right now are maintenance people. We have no people doing improvements. Is that a true statement, or am I wrong?
Can the street improvement money that we pass resolution go towards wages?
Yes.
Okay. And so I think what Pete's saying is just breaking it down so we know what comes out of the improvement tax and what comes out of the maintenance resolution we made. And I don't know if that's been done in the past.
Yeah.
Honestly, the new one that you just made will not go towards people. It'll just go straight to your capital projects.
0.5%.
Yeah.
What,
Because you've already funded your people.
And I think what Pete's getting at just it's really just a number side, right,
Yeah.
Pete? I mean, he just wants to know
How much is for
at
street
the end of the
maintenance?
year,
and how
we
much is
we
for
put
improvement?
X
Well,
amount
here-
to street improvements, but how many employees, how much wages did we actually put towards that?
So here's part of your problem is, gosh, it's been 6 months ago. We talked about what we think the crews should look like, and we grouped it. So like we had a pothole crew, we had a whatever. So we had all these different crews, right? Well, some of those funding was coming from all different kinds of places so that we could get these crews to do these projects. And so if that's how you guys want to see it, I would have to almost create another department within the street department.
yes.
Is that the consensus that I'm getting?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, is that a lot of work for you to do?
Absolutely.
Well, but I think it's. I think
Because
it's
I don't know
worth-
how to identify
I think
those
it's worth
people.
the effort. I really do. I think we need to know how many dollars we're going to have for street improvements, and if that's not going to work, for instance, we could say, okay, the money we're going to get July 1 is going to be dedicated to street improvements. That's the 0.5% sales tax. 90% is going to be for street improvements. That money needs to go into that account of street improvements. If we don't do any street improvements for the year, then that accumulates in that account. And if the rest of it is street maintenance. We have an ongoing street maintenance crew, and we're all set up for street maintenance. We're not set up for street improvements. Now that's something we have to work on, and that's something that we have to fund. We don't have equipment for a street improvement crew, but those two, as far as I'm concerned, as far as I see, the way I would set it up to be two different entities.
And I think I understand what Pete's saying here. It's taken me a little bit to grasp it, but street maintenance is possibly, would you agree that it's more important? And that would be the first thing. You got to take care of what you have right now, street maintenance. You got to continually
Absolutely.
So let's just throw fictitious numbers out here, and I'm going to say 400 and 400. He's wanting to make sure that we have the $400,000 in place to take care of the street maintenance before we go out there and start more street improvements.
Well, yeah, if
don't
it's,
spend out of each other's column.
if we're gonna build,
Makes sense, Josh?
It does. I will just say I've worked for a company that had multiple places in-house, and basically X department would charge Y department for their services, and so it became convoluted because now if you have your equipment over in the maintenance side and now you need your street improvement side, how do you bill? Say, hey, now I don't take out of my street maintenance side because I'm using your
roller,
your roller. So when you get equipment in there, if you want to do it totally separate, then you got to figure in equipment. I mean, there's a lot of things to factor in. And I just remember working for this company and like, why are we billing the company 10 feet away in the same apartment to do X work when we're all the same company? But the problem is because, but I understand what Pete's saying, because you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. You might be saying, well, we got 800,000 here. We need to work on maintenance and not improvement. So I get what Pete's saying. And I wonder when the public works director, if he does a job, let's say Horton Street, and we never factor in labor,
Yeah, that's wrong.
And so I wonder when he puts together his plan, if he'd say it's going to take 200 hours of labor, and somehow we can factor that in to how much labor went to street improvement or street maintenance.
In budgeting?
In budgeting. I don't know.
That's project budgeting, and we don't get to that detail.
Well,
Is that more on the director's side?
Huh?
Is that more on each director's side?
Absolutely, yeah.
And so,
yeah, and what I'm saying also is that,
And they have to identify it for the finance department to know.
Absolutely. You're not supposed to know,
Yeah.
how many laborers it's going to take to do a block of city streets.
Yeah.
But that is something that needs to be figured in when we talk about whether it's labor, whether it's rebar, whether it's concrete. All those numbers have to be ready to tie in for an answer for the commission.
yeah, honestly, project budgeting is the only way you can really compare apples to apples. Otherwise, like you say, if you hire out a contractor, you got now labor hours factor in. If you do it in the house, you're not factoring labor hours. So it's not an equal thing to look at when you're bringing to the commission.
Absolutely.
Without
So when we get
budgeting.
an engineer for those projects that we contract out, we'll have readily available information for that purpose. But again, like you were saying, in-house, it's a lot harder to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, it
Because
is
we're sharing
hard.
resources. and
I think it's
tools
hard from a big. I would think each job, even if you say, "Hey, I'm gonna use the equipment," X amount of hours. You know how many hours your people work in a year? This is gonna take me 100 hours to work.
2 weeks.
I build out 5,000 hours for the year, so I'm 5% of my budget. I mean, it sounds difficult, but it's really pretty simple.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying also is that come July 1, we have income for street improvements. It's designated for street improvements. Now, if we put that all into streets,
It won't go into streets. It goes into its separate fund as identified in the resolution.
okay, and that's
Mhm.
well, that's what I'm getting at. And
But I don't have the current budget we didn't know that information when this budget was
Okay.
built. So there will have to be a budget amendment to
Okay.
allow for that.
Okay. Well, that's what I'm getting at. And
Okay.
and if we decide, we have to make a decision. Are we going to bid out our capital improvements, or are we going to try to set up a crew to do capital improvements? I don't think it's been successful at all to combine capital improvements and street maintenance. It doesn't work, and it's not going to. concentration that's required for street maintenance requires you to stay on street maintenance. You have the same people doing the street maintenance. It's a totally different animal when you go to street improvements, and you can't be meshing the two budgets together. You can't be meshing the two crews together. We need to set up a pothole patching crew, and that's what that pothole patching crew does. Now, maybe they don't do that all year. Maybe they do something else in January and February that they do in October, November. But we have to designate specific responsibilities and keep those people doing that same thing. With this idea of us trying to do street improvements and street maintenance with the same crew, it doesn't work, and it never will work. So that's what I'm looking at, and that's what I think that. And I'm just trying to keep the money separate.
Yeah, sure.
And you've got a handle on that.
Yep.
So if we decide 2021, we're going to only do, let's just say we're going to do Cooper Street. Well, we've already got funds for doing Cooper Street, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's in the 21 budget.
Yes.
And that would be considered street improvements.
Yes.
Now, we may want to go back and figure out a way that we're going to do Cooper Street other than with our maintenance crew, because we have maintenance work that needs to be done on a daily basis.
And I think those are all valid points, and I feel like we kind of understand what you're giving us in terms of direction. But I just don't want us to get too far away from kind of the purpose of tonight, if that's okay, in terms of what is the commission's priorities.
Yes, I understand,
Absolutely.
and
Yes, sir.
I'm with you, Jeremy. I just want to make sure I'm protecting.
You are heard.
Protecting our street money.
Absolutely.
You're doing a great job, Pete.
Thank you.
And so I don't know if I'm not leading this discussion per se, but is there other thoughts in terms of priorities that the council would like to focus on for the upcoming budget
I
year?
just want to know how close this is. Like attorney 3%, was that based off the 200,000?
Yes. So there's going to be some leeway there.
And we
that
can
you'll
put
have
that
to be able to
put
use
that money in street improvements then.
Or sewer.
Oh. Well, we're not talking about sewer.
But I mean, I don't know where
No,
Feel weird.
that's next
But
week.
honestly, there seems like there's a little bit of, like Andy talked about, we have extra money, maybe with municipal court, maybe with the reduction of a few things there, that there might be a little bit of, 2%, 3%.
Yes and no. There's been some changes recently that Jeremy and I talked about today, so that's going to take up some of those dollars. I would say probably anywhere from 60 to 80,000, somewhere in that range, possibly.
So tell me this: what if the lawyer wages wouldn't have reduced? Where would we come up with that money?
We
We would have had to do something.
would have had to do something else.
So can we still look at doing something else as
Yeah.
options?
I would say not at this time. Jeremy?
I think that it would be difficult to walk that back, but not impossible.
Well, I would just say, this speaking for myself, the one thing I hate is as soon as we do something, it's all of a sudden, hey, now we have other places to spend it.
Yeah.
And I don't know what you guys are talking about, so I'm not sure what it is.
Well,
So it might be something we need.
Like you're talking about the budget cuts. If we made that cut, we were prepared to spend $200,000-$300,000 with an attorney, and now we're not going to have to. I feel like instead of that money just going back to, okay, now we're just fluff it off again, and we can put it somewhere we need to.
I think it'll be put to good use.
Okay.
I'll just say that.
Is it
Because
going to city
honestly,
commission?
Huh?
This is going to the city commission, 0.01%?
No.
Because honestly, my thoughts on this whole thing is I would like to see the mills reduced by about 2.5.
I know you said that.
So
The assessed valuations went up, so maybe you'll be able to.
I wanted 2.5 off. No, 2.5 off of budget neutral from last year.
Whoa, there's a lot of fancy words.
And you do realize that you've not raised tax dollars for the past 10 years.
We haven't, but tax dollars have raised.
I understand that, but your needs have not changed. They've
But-
actually gone
Right,
up.
we have raised tax dollars, but the budget has increased based off the budget increases with the assessed valuation a little bit. Half a mil.
not much, Josh. You've been pretty flat on ad valorem tax coming into the city.
Yeah.
You really have. And it's probably made up for areas where maybe they've dropped in other areas. And what's really hard on your guys' budget is it fluctuates a lot based on airport. So if we have a lot of people flying, we're buying a lot of fuel. Those dollars are coming back, but your budget's increasing and fluctuating, and so it's really hard to see. You're going to see increase in revenue one year and not as much the next year because of those fuel cells.
I mean, 2.5 mils is what, 120 roughly, 130. Yeah. Do you think that's doable?
No,
I don't, because we started this conversation off with, do we have any matching grants? And if you really get down into, and I can get more detail for you for the next meeting, but by department, when you look at how much of that is personnel, it's pretty high. 80 to 90% of their budgets are personnel in a lot of situations. There's not a lot of wiggle room anywhere else.
So what if we think outside the box? We have, let's say we have property at the lake that we've been sitting on. We can sell that.
Yep, that's income.
We have municipal court. We reduce so much. I mean, there's ways that we can.
Those are one-time dollars, though. So remember that.
I understand that.
One-time dollars.
One-time dollars.
But that's how you. Yeah, I understand that too. But again, my ears perked up when I heard property at the lake. But one-time dollars can actually create more income down the road because those ain't really one-time dollars. You're getting them back in tax revenue.
Not at the lake. We wouldn't.
Possibly someday, but you're still getting traffic. You're getting those people coming into town. They're going to buy groceries. I guess they're not. I guess they're not going to buy groceries here. They're not going to spend money here.
No, I'm not saying that.
I'm not talking. I'm good. I don't even. Just don't even worry about it.
No.
What?
So, but yeah. So
they're one-time dollars in the fact that we don't get anything off the assessed valuation because they're in the county.
Right.
I understand that. But what my point is that's bringing more people, more families. They're entertaining here. They're eating here. Those are the tax dollars that are supporting our businesses. So the more people we have in this community, the better off we are.
Oh, I agree.
So really, it's not a one-time hit. And I'm not directing this towards you. I'm just saying when I get head shakes, I start thinking that I need to explain myself that this tax money is going to come back and help our community. The more property that we are using and making viable for the community.
Yeah. I mean, so just explain what comes out of general government, 4%.
Lots of things. You have work comp, which is a huge dollar amount, $200,000. Liability insurance, $270,000. Utilities for this building. There may be some utilities in there for Memorial Hall as well. Internet, network contracts.
Is that utilities? This utilities for First Source also? Is that not factored in?
Oh, it would be for this year because we don't have any place, so it has to come out of here.
Before I forget, work comp. Last time we bid that out.
It's been years ago, 20 years ago, maybe, possibly.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Shall we? Do you think it's wise to bid out work?
As a finance director, do you think it's wise to not bid out something after 20 years?
I think they're very specialized. The group that we're with, they're very specialized to municipalities.
Do you think there's a handful of places across the country that specialize in municipalities?
Yeah, there probably is.
So, I mean, it could be competitive maybe after 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
Write that down.
Internet network contracts. We pay $30,000 to have fiber to our building. Insurance consultants. Any kind of insurance consultants that we have. That really doesn't apply anymore because we've stopped doing that.
Have we, in fact, I mean, that's a question I have. Have we stopped that insurance consultant?
We are no longer paying him, but he still has some services that he provides to us based off of last year's contract. So
Based off of last year's contract.
Yeah.
So we no longer.
Right, we aren't paying him anything,
paying him.
but he's still providing a service because he has to fulfill his contract.
Okay, I got you.
Custodial supplies. Any kind of donations to public service events, so like your fireworks, your downtown programs, those kind of things come out of these dollars. Copier agreements for this building and also Memorial Hall. Postage, telephone, advertising, legal publications, trash service, dues and subscriptions, bank and credit card fees, pest control, building maintenance, street lights, Streetlights is very expensive. Contractual services for any kind of strategic planning. So there's a lot of things that come out of that general government. It's kind of a catch-all.
And how much is 4%? I'm sorry, I should know that.
340,000. So, a good portion of that's your liability and work comp insurance.
So you said 1%. So 1% is what?
Around 60. Is that right?
1%. Are you talking
It's like
about
66,000. 1% of your budget's about 66,000.
So the 4% would be 240.
No, it's actually 340. Unless I did a calculation wrong.
So moving, I'm assuming that's okay. Obviously, just kind of recapping what I've gained so far. Pete's all about the streets.
Mm-hmm.
We've got all these other categories that are important to different individuals on this commission. And I don't know that I've heard yet that there's one thing that anyone besides Pete is very dedicated or focused on. And I know you can't say this is my one thing because you're looking at everything. Everything is what you're focused on. But is there any individual opinions as to this is the thing that is most important to me or that rises to my, that I'm centered on? I know economic development appears
Yeah, I think
to be
the thing that we haven't funded and we are failing to recognize that without it, it doesn't float the rest of the ship is economic development. And if we don't fund it to some, whatever appropriate level that is, we are really shooting ourselves in the foot being able to fund all these other things. That's what concerns me about it. So
How much did we spend in economic development last year?
Well, this year you had more money last year because you had first source revenue. So you don't have that anymore. So you're really just paying for, and when you look at that budget, economic development budget, you have to keep in mind that we built into that budget is our payments out to for our CID districts, and so some of those her budget can look real inflated because of those payments. It's revenue coming in, but it's going right back out.
Can you tell me the cash reserve 2 years ago and the cash reserve now in economic development?
Cash reserve 2 years ago was, I want to say, around 600,000. No, 400,000. It was like 483,000, and we're down to zero.
So, and then did our budget shrink over the last 2 years?
No.
So the budget's been the same, and
Except for the first source budget, it no longer exists.
But yeah, but that wouldn't. So was that part of the 600,000 in reserves that was being used because of the first source?
Yes.
Okay.
That first source, that's where the dollars were. They were sitting in that fund.
Okay.
And that was because we sold the armory building. And so we had some dollars that had been accumulated
So
in
over
there.
the last 2 years, we've probably spent $1 million towards economic development.
Yeah, no, I don't know. It's been that much. Well, you mean like in total?
Yeah, in total.
Everything?
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay.
So what's your point at that point?
No, I was just trying to see. I'm going through budgets. I know. So I'm trying to see what are cash reserves in the other ones? Have they been depleted as well?
No, we always try to keep 3 months operating, and in most funds we've been able to maintain that. The street fund, honestly, was depleted more than I wanted it to be, but I think we'll be able to make that up this year.
No, yeah. What I was just getting at, I was with Randy, and I was thinking, if we had reserves that we could use, but if there's no more reserves to be used, then we've
Right, but we've
Yeah.
also funded a lot of projects and worked on a lot of projects.
I was agreeing with Randy. I'm saying
Okay.
if we need money there, and it's been depleted, so
that
we might need to, yeah.
You got to figure out a way to build it back up.
And I'm probably conflating reserves with some other term. I think that's my point. So I want to make a comment. I agree that the lake is a valuable resource in terms of monies to the community and outside money and it coming in. What worries me is that it's such a complicated system, and to rely on it as a ongoing increasing fund gets into the complexity of people at the lake, how much more traffic they want, how much more people. I don't intend to answer this tonight or even come up with it. The point being that, and you can help me with this too, but once we reduce the mill, I'm not sure how we get it back if we need it. And so in terms of the lake use as an ongoing funding source, I think you guys are working on a more robust, comprehensive plan where you can really come to grips with, do we want to develop more of that, or are we developing so much of it that we're going to start to drive people away? It's just a comment, because I know Skitch thought I was shaking my head about that. My nervous twitches. I just don't know.
It's a pretty nervous twitch.
It is, but I just don't think we have a comprehensive enough plan about the lake to know what it's going to be.
We also,
let me
as a
address it real
commission,
quick,
said,
Randy, if you don't mind, being that I thought you were shaking your head at me, and we talk about selling off some lots and developing a little bit more of the lake. That's what we were talking about, right? And we go back 6 months ago, and we had to fight off for 3 or 4 meetings selling 17 acres off of the east side of the lake as a whole, which could have been developed in a heartbeat by anybody or their brother. And we didn't care at that time. We wanted to sell that 17 acres because we got an estimate for $42,000 is what it would bring. And I remember vividly having to fight tooth and nail to not sell a huge chunk because I knew we were giving away money. We were giving away property, and I knew if there's one thing I know, it's property and their values somewhat. I've made mistakes in the past, but I've also had some gains. And that would have been a huge loss if we gave that 17 acres away in one chunk. So we fought tooth and nail to keep it here, and now we're trying to wisely go back. We've put a committee together. That committee is actually, the Lake Committee has actually appointed another committee to research and find out the most viable way to appropriately build that lake to its full potential. So that's what we're talking about, and it's going to be a good thing at the end of the day. We've got several people researching it from the Kansas City area, from here in town, to give us all avenues and aspects of the sale of those properties.
Well, and that goes to the point that I'm making, which is if we're going to count on it as a revenue resource, we kind of need to know
We're on somebody else's timeline.
that where we are. So anyway, that's why the head shakes. So, Jeremy, does that leave you hanging?
Clear as mud, but just a little bit.
We'll fill you in on.
I have a little bit better understanding, but I still am yet to. I know that everybody has things that they're passionate about, but I still need to have an understanding. Categorically speaking, is there something that you're passionate about that we need to pay close attention to as we're developing this budget for the next year?
I'll tell you mine real quick. I know Pete said streets. Mine is the money we've saved so far. I've already said it. I'll say it again just so you know. And the money we've saved is reduction of mills.
Okay.
Part of it. Not all of it, but part of it. Part of the money we saved. The perpetual money. Not the one-time money. The perpetual money. Reduction of mills. So.
Well, I think Randy is definitely passionate about economic development.
Absolutely.
And I would like to discuss that if that's okay. We're looking at 5% of $8 million for economic development. We're looking at $400,000, and we're strapped. We need money, and we have an opportunity right now that's on the table to participate with the county or with the BEDCO new BEDCO program. I don't know what our contribution would be if we decided to eliminate our economic development director or position here and join up with BEDCO. What our contribution would be expected to be. Do you have any idea, Jeremy, on that? Have you had any discussion?
No. We've really kind of waited to see if what the development with BEDCO is going to be in terms of their structure. I know that they are getting a gentleman who is strongly considering leading those efforts. I met him recently, and until those pieces kind of become, I don't think that he's accepted the position for one, not officially. And then even when he does, we still have to ascertain kind of what how that structure is going to work, how we're going to fold into those efforts, and then if that's the case, we reassess whether or not we need our leg of economic development, or whether we need to phase that out, or whether it can be an immediate change. So there's a lot of there really is a lot of unanswered questions.
And I understand, but do you think that would be our budget session or our budget comes out in when July, August? When
August is when you set it. July is usually when you have it pretty finalized.
So do you think that in your mind that they might have all those questions answered by?
Oh, absolutely. I hope so.
By July,
by that time. In this, there is a definite dollar sign attached to our economic development efforts, and those things should be easily identifiable.
Yeah.
Salary. There's a lot of different things in that line.
Yeah, I know there's a lot of benefits, but I'm sure there's.
Well, no, I'm not saying benefit or disadvantage.
Yeah.
I'm simply saying there is a number that you could determine what that portion of our operation costs.
Okay, so that's a phase there, or a portion of what we could change.
It is something we could absolutely
explore. Yeah, that'd be, we could work on some of the items like quality of life. I don't see that we can do much with that. Public safety, government. I know there's probably some places in government that we can work on. But when I look at some of these items that we're spending money on, any way that we can save money, and I think our working with the county is going to be a big saver as well.
I agree.
And I think that's going to help us in all phases.
I agree.
And so,
and I'll say, you ask if there's any one thing for certain that we're interested in. I think you have probably figured out I'm interested in all of it. I don't mind helping out when it comes to looking at projects, when it comes, the streets and sewers or whatever we may be discussing, because that's, obviously that's a point of, if I have any expertise, that would be the area. But I'm concerned with the whole thing. And one of the, a couple of things that's been said in public by some people is you don't talk about anything besides streets and sewers. And I just think that's a very unfair statement, because there's so many aspects of this deal that we discuss on a weekly basis between Jeremy and ourselves and with each other back and forth, that to think that anybody's just concerned about one area and that's it is an unfair statement. So I guess I'm saying I'm concerned about all of it, and I think that we're on the path to doing some good things. And I just want the public to know that I don't just care about streets.
Well, I don't either, but I'm passionate about streets. I'm passionate about the sewers. I'm passionate about our water lines. We have, I'm more passionate right now about our sewers and water than I am about our streets. Our streets we can gravel if we need to, but our water lines and our sewer lines, there ain't anything we can do but fix them. And and they have to be fixed before we do any street work. So that's I'm anxious to get into the sewer portion of what we're doing, and I think we can get some shovel-ready projects ready to go. And
Did you ever think you'd live long enough to say you were passionate about sewers?
No, I never thought that. But that's our need in Fort Scott. Our need in Fort Scott is sewer improvements right now.
I think if I were to ask a question of each of you, and you don't have to answer it tonight, but if you were to go back, is this how you would see the pie divvied out?
You mean before we seen it?
Yeah.
I would have never thought that the cops got that much, Travis. They are a big part of it.
So that's my thing. Is this would this be your priority, or would this pie change a little bit?
I think that as far as the police and fire, I mean, I know it's a big portion of it, but I'll say nobody realizes how much they need them until they need them.
Right.
So I'm okay with a big portion of it being that. I'm glad that they're trying to control their budgets, and I like the deal that they're flipping the money back and forth. Mm-hmm. And if you don't need it, don't spend it. That's the only thing I ask. You don't just come in every 2 years and say, well, we got the money, so we're going to burn through it. Let's keep it piled up if we can.
And that's really the only area that you have authority to increase your budget. So
Or
if
decrease.
for some reason, from state law, if you had a big need, like you had a big case that came up and you needed that spending authority, you have the ability to do that without a public vote. If it's
For
public,
safety.
for public safety relation, yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, honestly, mine, I knew public safety, but the quality of life, we didn't realize is our second biggest.
Hmm.
So what if public safety? Because, and I hate to go back to sewers again, but if public safety was a raw sewage, would that not be that you could increase that because of raw sewage dumping into a river?
It's different. It's a utility.
I think
So
it's
it
how
should
the-
be
it's how the
supported,
state- It's how
yeah.
the state labels it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
Yeah.
I think it's a well-known fact that the quality of your sewers, the quality of your water, the quality of your streets is all a huge part of quality of life. And so when we're looking at 15% for quality of life, that has to include sewer improvements, street improvements.
Well, but they're different funding
can't
mechanisms.
you can't consider quality of life the golf course. You got what, 5% or 2%
I
of
think
the
it's
people.
how you define it, and how we've defined it as more as recreational.
Yeah.
And so that's
Yeah,
what we call
I don't
quality
think
of
you
life.
want
But-
streets or sewers labeled as quality of life because then it's a not. I think a quality of life is maybe not needed.
Right. You don't have to fund it.
Yeah, and I see streets as something that you have to fund. You have to. And quality of life, would be
Yeah, your parks and your
Well, I don't want to dwell on sewers, but I've looked at some of the videos that have come forth, and our sewers are in terrible shape, terrible shape.
And Michael has told us
Yes.
this is off topic, but he's told us that he needs $400,000 a year to just do improvements, and right now the fund cannot sustain that.
Yeah.
So we've got to come up. That's another conversation.
Another
but-
work session.
Well, tell me what the capital improvement of 3% is.
Capital outlay programs.
Capital outlay.
So that's going to be for all departments. So let's say I'm trying to think: golf course, LaRoche Stadium, the aquatic center, Memorial Hall. If we had to do any improvements here, I'm thinking.
And would those be wants instead of needs?
No, they're usually needs. There's really not wants. Like if we need a new mower, that's got to come out of those dollars. And so we're setting aside roughly about $200,000 a year just for those types of needs. We may have a pump that goes bad at the aquatic center. We may have an air conditioner that goes bad down at Buck Run. You don't know. We're trying to plan ahead for those things.
So it's basically a depreciation fund.
It really is. It really is. It's not really that's just what it is. It's a change out program.
We're looking at $240,000 there.
For those types of things.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
absolutely.
3%.
Yeah, and it was in your capital outlay plan. That big plan that we approved last year. And so they're identified there.
Lindsay, did you have anything you wanted to add? No?
I feel the same way Randy does, but
Well, Randy forgot to mention, I think we probably need to focus some time on maybe a possibility if we're looking proactive is maybe something if happened with healthcare.
Yeah, funny, I was thinking about that before I came over. That's true. Yes,
Yeah.
that's
We have
100%
no
true.
fluid dollars. We're not just talking about funding in like just economic development department, but even if, say, something were to happen and we know that we don't need maybe as a robust city department, we're still going to have dollars for those funds to be able to go out to get more dollars. It's from the state and to be able to pursue that program. I don't think anybody's asking for. We're just very strapped, and just bringing those things up needs to be on the top or on the forefront of our mind. And for healthcare, that was a big concern for us. not that long ago. And at this point where there's no way to be able to help or fund or that would take some really, really hard questions. So I
All right, well, no one has anything else. We'll call it a night.
Let's go home. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan.
Thank you.
We have to make a motion in the meeting.
You don't have to. It's just a work session.
Work session.
Oh, really? Well,
Yeah, we
No
do.
motions.
We'll be right back in a little bit. Just
Okay.
be back.